boys. Just a quick Typhon kill. Easy. Yo, gamers. Check it out. We got another normal difficulty build completed. This is our Disruptor. Disruptor is Neidan and Rogue Mastery. I've been wanting to build a throne knife build for a while and be successful with him. No! Spoilers, this one's pretty unsuccessful in certain areas. No! Let's quickly go over our gear. You guys know by now, I've talked about the Holy Trinity quite a bit. The Holy Trinity is Stonebinder's Cuffs, Hallowed Hat, and the Golden Scarab on your amulet. Those three items they all give plus to skills. The first thing you get is Stonebinder's Cuffs. You get this in Act 1. This provides plus to skills and elemental resists. And then on this one, I rolled Fire Res plus Intelligence. This is really nice. This will last me basically the entire difficulty until we get to Epic. We'll replace it with basically the same one. As the charm shows, I rolled a Disease Plumage with the 10% poison damage completion bonus for a total of 25% poison damage. That's important because we're throwing knives that are coated with our poison. The knives are poison and bleed and pierce base, so it's pretty huge here. You can also go, which I would recommend, you can also go a bit more defensive and put like Amun-Ra's Glory on here. I would recommend that over the 25 poison damage, but that additional poison damage actually was kind of hard to pass up, so we just left it there from Act 1. The next piece you would likely get is the Hallowed Hat. Hallowed Hat provides Vitality Resist, Health Regen, and plus the skills. So you get this in end of Act 2. You can get it reliably. You can get it from Act 3. Just by vendor farming, or if you're really lucky with drops. You can see here I put a Crystal of Erebus. Crystal of Erebus can roll plus to skills, which is really nice. It's a quest in Act 4. We got unlucky and did not get the plus to skills. However, it rolled 10% total damage, and since this build does approximately 5 or 6 different damage types, 10% total damage is pretty solid, so I put that on there. Also, that's a huge chunk of Vit Res. That basically caps our Vit Res right there. So, pretty nice. And then lastly, for our Holy Trinity, we have an amulet called the Prismatic Pendant. And the Golden Scarab Charm, which requires level 30, is a charm from Act 2 and Eternal Embers. Eternal Embers is legendary only, so you get this from Act 2. Like I said, it requires level 30, but the plus to skills is the force completion bonus, so any juicy amulet like the Prismatic Pendant, we'll talk about our knives here in a minute, but Prismatic Pendant is really cool because it transmits 9 elemental damage, 3 fire, 3 cold, 3 lightning in this case, from every auto attack, or on our knives. We're throwing 9 knives, we'll get to that in just a minute, but each of our 9 knives transmits the 9 elemental damage, so that's pretty good damage. Additionally, Prismatic provides 15% elemental res and 8% damage reflected. The elemental resist is actually really good. The reflection, it's pretty low value. But the Prismatic is a very nice prefix. No suffix on this pendant, but it's good enough with no suffix. And then that's what we put the Golden Scarab on for our plus 3 to skills. And then at the end of Act 3, we got really lucky. I will show this first. This is our chest piece. Like I said, Vest of the Wandering Goat. This provides 54 armor, chance of confusion when you attack, some energy regen, some movement speed, which is always cool to have on a chest piece, chance to dodge attacks, and minus requirements. The minus requirements is kind of nice because since we went hybrid to pick this piece up, additionally reduction to requirements in the future is really nice. And then the coup de grace on this piece, +1 to skills. That's really huge. +4 to all skills in normal difficulty is really nice. I showed you guys our amulet first. Let's go ahead and look at some of our swap amulets. There was an option to use a Spellbound medallion. I chose the Prismatic Pendant over Spellbound just for one simple reason. The knives is doing most of our damage, but the percentage elemental damage really helps with Shen Pao. We'll talk about Shen Pao here in a little bit, but this does elemental damage. So you can also go Ritual Talisman in Act 4 and places that you fight demons. The resistance to demons and magical is really strong. Makai archers, specifically in Act 4, is they're really powerful. So 18% less damage from magic or demons is super huge. We also have honor guards in this build. I don't have a lot of stun res. I would recommend getting stun res. Do as I say, not as I do, kind of thing. So just to show you, and then also hail amulet. We got super lucky here. 25% strength and 12% health. I actually think this one is probably top tier for this build. Yeah, big strength, big health, just to show you some other options for your amulets. And then moving on to our rings. The rings is the same kind of scenario. What we're wearing is what you shouldn't, like, what you should try to strive for is just one of these pieces, this occult ring. You can get occult on all 3 pieces of jewelry. That's overkill, and I do recommend it on the rings. And what occult provides is percentage elemental damage and casting speed. We are casting primarily one spell, and it's knives, and so you want to be able to cast that pretty quick. So 93% increased casting speed is pretty nice. We put Vile Ichor on here for some flat vitality, and then percentage vitality, and then poison damage. We'll explain the vitality here in a little bit, but suffice it to say for now, we are actually doing more vitality damage when we pop Weakest Chakra. Okay, so then our second ring here is Tainted of Virility. Virility was important to get things equipped, but now we can remove it. As you can see, we don't actually need the 22 strength, but for a period we needed the strength. Tainted prefix is poison damage. We rolled 20 poison damage on the Tainted. I think you can get up to like 25 poison, something like that. So that's a pretty good roll. And then we put a utility piece on here, Spectral Matter. What I mean by utility is when you're casting your knives, it costs a lot of energy. So when you hit a mob with your knives and this energy leech is on here, you actually leech with every single one of your knives. So that's pretty cool. We also, for a period, needed the completion bonus, the 11 intelligence. Again, we don't need that anymore, but for a period we did. So that's why we're using these 2 rings. But you can see in our inventory, we had Hardy of Vitality. This thing is insane. 6% health and 267 health. That's a huge chunk of health with 10% strength. That's really nice. We have just a Ring of Tinkerer. Whenever you find that from Atlantis, it's good to kind of just buy it. Tinkerer means you can put 2 charms or 2 relics on it. The Captain's Ring, we were using this for a period. This Captain's Ring is really nice for minus requirements for strength. And some Ellie Res. It's really big. And then also, yeah, Hail of Dexterity, same thing. We need some dexterity for a period, and we were using this for a while. So just so you know, be on the lookout for some flexibility in your jewelry. That's my recommendation if you're following this build. Okay, so for our weapons, we just got super lucky here. Depots of Finesse. Depots is percentage total damage, and remember, like I said before, we're doing approximately 5 or 6 types of damage, so multiplying that by 20% is really nice. And then Finesse is just flat dexterity, so that's the base weapon. And then on it we put Essence of the Blade of Thanatos. Thanatos is another percentage of total damage. It's only 9%, but any little percentage to all damage types is quite nice. So that's 28% total damage, which is pretty good. That really does add up. Okay, so that's our weapon. And then if you're looking for a weapon that is similar to this, the kinds of things that you want on your weapon are stats. Because the base damage doesn't matter, the damage type doesn't matter, because you're not actually hitting with the weapon itself. So just look for big health, big resist, big casting speed, some damage scalars, because again, you're not attacking with it, you're just using it to get your global modifiers. So next is our shield. We have Hail of Reprisal. Hail is percent strength and percent health. Hail is the higher roll. There's Hardy and Robust. Those are the smaller 2 rolls. Hail provides 21% strength and 9% health. And then Reprisal, there's a couple of types of Reprisals. Reprisal can roll Life Leech and or piercing damage. There's one other one, I can't remember what it is. But Reprisal is 15% chance of Life Leech retaliation. So that's pretty cool. And then on the shield, a pretty standard relic or charm is the rigid carapace. This gives on normal, it gives 20%. We got the 5 flat strength as a completion bonus. That's not very good. You can giga farm for the completion bonus that gives more pierce, but on normal it's only 8 additional pierce. So I didn't really feel like I needed to farm for that 8 additional pierce. You can see over here we're at 20% piercing resist, which is pretty low. We do have some artifacts to swap around to help that. But I felt like 20% was okay. If you're playing with curses, that is just not acceptable. So you wanna giga farm for a little bit more. Okay, so that's most of our gear. The last thing to talk about is our artifact, and our artifact is similar to our weapon. You want a lot of stats. And in this case, if you get something like this 10 damage, 21 poison damage, and energy leech from a Shroud of Eternal Night, this does get transmitted via our knives, our throwing knives. So that's really, really strong. Shroud of Eternal Night is huge. We did get the completion bonus of 8% attack speed, and it has 10% attack speed on it. Now that's going to inflate your DPS number, but you're not actually going to get more speed because, again, like I said, we're casting the knives. You're not attacking with the weapon. But just so you know, the Shroud of Eternal Night for this build is still really, really strong. 10 physical damage, 21 poison damage, 10 piercing damage, and 40 energy leech is just a massive amount of damage to be transmitted. And each of the 9 knives transmits all of that. Same thing with Shen Pao. Shen Pao works exactly the same way. It transmits this flat damage from gear. We did have some other artifacts. In Act 5, you have something called the Golden Belt. This is a really strong defensive artifact. If you're missing some armor, if you're missing, in my case, some pierce resist, we go from 20 to 60%. Like, that's huge. And also in our case, this will give us 20% strength. We are a hybrid build, so any sort of strength scaling is quite nice. So when you continue into epic difficulty, you can see our fire res is at 64%. This will overcap us, so we'll be ready for epic difficulty. And so it's nice to have these swap pieces. We have one other artifact that I built called the Blood Rage. This is also a very nice damage-oriented artifact for our build. This is 21 physical damage and 30 bleeding damage over 3 seconds. Now, bleed damage is pretty big for our knives. Each of our knives, each 9 knives transmits the 24 physical and the bleed damage. And then also it gives a percentage bleed multiplier. So this one is quite a bit as strong, and we were using Blood Rage for a long time until we got Shroud of Eternal Night. And they're both pretty even. The reason Shroud of Eternal Night is pretty good is because edges it out is because of the stun res. We have a low stun res, like I was showing you guys before. The Honor Guard's charm. This would almost cap our stun res, and I would recommend that if you find yourself getting stunned a ton. Just so you guys know, you have options, but this Blood Rage is very, very strong. And just to show you some additional application. Our knives at our current skill point allocation is 207 bleeding damage, so this would lean a little bit heavier into the bleed portion of those knives. So that's why it is almost just as good as the Shroud of Eternal Night, and eventually it will be better. Okay, so that's the last of our artifacts. Let's go ahead and talk about our skills. Starting with the Rogue Mastery, the most important thing in the lower tier of our skills is Envenom Weapon. You want to max that out because you coat your weapons, and whether you shoot with a bow, you auto attack, anything. This adds at +4 to skills. Remember, we have +4 to skills. At +4, we're almost hitting for 400 points of damage with one skill. Now let me just show you this weapon again. This does not do anywhere close to 400 points of base damage, right? So this skill alone is hitting harder with poison. And now, granted, it's over 3 seconds, but like, you hit once, and the poison will tick for harder than your initial weapon hit will. So it's pretty insane. And then, like I said, remember the throwing knives, which is this skill here. We're throwing, you can see here it says 63 energy cost and 9 projectiles. Each of these 9 projectiles transmits that 400 points of poison damage. So that's why you want to coat your weapons with this poison. And like I said, this is the math before buffs. So moving up the skill tree, we've got Nightshade is 35% poison damage, and you can see Toxic Distillation is at 1.34% poison damage. So that is a global modifier here. So you can see if we hover over our poison damage, we're at 137% poison damage. If you turn that buff off, it goes from 137 to 68. This is just from our gear. So it's huge modifiers here. So we will want to max both of these out eventually. Okay, and then lastly, you want to at least 1 point Mandrake. This when you're hit with your knives or any of your weapons that are coated with poison, you cause the monster to have a chance to fumble and be confused. This is a nice small layer of defense. You can hit a mob with your 9 projectile knife, and a whole pack of monsters can be confused and fumble their attacks. It's quite nice. We are not using poison gas bomb. This is a really viable way to level. I would recommend leveling this way, maxing out poison gas bomb and shrapnel, and then pulling those points away and then putting them into your knives when you have flurry of knives. So the progression is skip throwing knife and level the first 2 chapters, maybe 3 chapters with just poison gas bomb, because you need to be up here at flurry of knives. This is when you start multiplying the amount of projectiles. So then you take points out of poison gas bomb and then just juice up both of your knife skill. So throwing knives, let me just quickly go over this. This is 9 projectiles, 10% chance to pass through enemies, and then it procs 207 bleed damage and 81 pierce damage. Now, remember, it also transmits envenom weapons, so this skill is quite juicy when it's fully maxed out. You need the base to be fully maxed out. You need to have +4 to skills to have no cooldown. At +3, it's very usable, but there's like a 0.02 second cooldown. It's a very short cooldown, so you can't quite spam it, but just so you know, you need plus the skills to have no cooldown. Additionally, to get 8 projectiles, you have to have plus the skills as well. So this is our main skill in Rogue, and as you can see, we put all our points into it. You don't need blade honing. This will transmit 3 piercing damage, but because we're not attacking with our weapon, this has a piercing ratio multiplier. And because we're not using our actual weapon, blade honing only will transmit the flat piercing damage. So we can pick that up later, but you really don't get much damage. So you want to lead into poison and bleed with this build. And so open wound does exactly that. You have a chance of proccing 117 bleed damage. We put 1 point here. Each knife, each of the 9 projectiles has a chance to proc this bleeding damage. So that's a 1 point for now. We'll continue to scale that as we go. Anatomy is the same thing. It's bleed oriented and it's a global bleed multiplier. So we'll want to max this, but we only 1 pointed for now. Lethal strike is fine. It uses your weapon. We're not leaning into that, but this is a bread and butter skill of Rogue. We might use that in legendary, but for now, again, like I said, we're just throwing knives. Same thing with calculated strike. This uses your weapon. We're not trying to use our weapon. We're not using traps. There may be room for traps in this build, but again, it's all about throwing these knives. Lastly, we have 2 skills. This is a passive called Disarm Trap. You're not a rogue unless you use this. Please use this. It's more damage to devices, more damage to constructs, and less damage from devices and constructs. It's very good. Now, constructs and devices are resistant to the types of damage that we deal, so scaling this up is really important. Even if it's just 1 point, it's really important. And then lastly, our defensive ability called Flash Powder. In a large radius, you cause fumble and you cause confusion. It's just when you get overwhelmed, you push this button and it helps you out in melee. Okay, so that's Rogue. That is Rogue. So moving on to Neidan Mastery, we've got a lot of points sprinkled. The bread and butter in this build for Neidan is Shen Pao. Let's quickly talk about this. In 5-meter radius, you have a chance for one of the following, and what that means is it will always proc one of the following. So it will be a bomb of either fire, cold, or lightning damage, and you can see at 16 out of 12, it's 360 fire, 360 cold, or 360 lightning damage. It's always one of the three. So that's why when we were talking about our gear, we were going over elemental damages. This also transmits Envenom Weapon, by the way. So 365, let's say you throw a 360 damage fire bomb, it also procs, remember, Envenom Weapon. So you're doing fire damage as flat, and then 400 poison damage minus buffs, you know. So it's huge. This is a big nuke. It also does reduction to enemy health. You have a chance of impaired aim, and you have a chance of slower movement. So this is a really nice big AoE clear. And then lower in our tree, starting on the left, Neidan is all about using energy and drinking potions. So these passive potions, when you drink an energy or health potion, potent elixir triggers, you get 10 health regen, 5 energy regen. You get poison, life leech, and bleed resist. You can continue to scale this, and indeed we will. Because the rotation of the Neidan Mastery is eventually you want to pick up Aura of Tranquility. This is an expensive skill. It costs 5 energy per second. It gives you absorption and some juicy resist. Now, like I said, it costs energy, so you're constantly drinking potions, meaning you're constantly under the effects of potent elixir. Now, moving on to the next skill, you'll see that sometimes drinking potions is bad. This is a passive when you're not under the effects of a potion, meaning you haven't drinking a potion recently. You get move speed, attack speed, and casting speed. Remember, the casting speed for us is the big one. On other builds, if you want the attack speed, obviously that's really good here too. And then everybody loves move speed. So while, like I said, while you're not under the effects of a potion, you get this. As soon as you drink one, you get this as a debuff. So you lose the movement, the attack, and the cast speed. So that's kind of the rotation there. It's all about drinking and throwing potions to deal damage. And then, again, last thing about potions. When you drink a potion, you have a chance to proc Ambrosia, Evasion, Jade Ember's Resolve, Life Drain, Service, and Speed. Those are Neidan and Eternal Ember exclusive potions. When you drink a potion, you get one of these. You have a chance for one of these to proc. So these are really nice. These are really nice defensive potions that do various things. The Potion of Speed is pretty self-explanatory. Service is armor. Life Draining is self-explanatory. Jade Emperor's Resolve is some resistances. Evasion is self-explanatory. Ambrosia is also some life leech resistance and stuff. So these are really nice passives. Okay, moving on over to the right, we 1 point Smoke Cloud. This is in a AoE. You stun and immobilize. It's just some CC. Now, one thing to note about Smoke Cloud is it constantly procs for its duration. It constantly does an effect for its entire duration. And so, while it's proccing one of these effects, you also can proc Consequences. And Consequences is really big in this build. It's like a little orange circle above the mob's head. I got frozen. Yo, look, dude. Consequences was applied to all of those ice crystals. It reduces resistances by 25% and are at 12 out of 8. If you kill a mob that has marked with consequences, you have a chance for it to be spread with mutual suffering. So this is really, really important here. Basically, every type of damage will proc consequences, and then all you have to do is kill it to keep it spreading. It's think of it like plague. Plague spreads pretty easily, and then so does consequences. We're not taking the pets from Neidan Mastery. It is a good pet, but we're not taking it. We're focusing on just throwing bombs and knives. Dragon's Flame, we'll pick that up later. Like I said, we're going to pick up Aura of Tranquility. It is expensive, so you want to build for it first. Its add-on is very good too. And then this is the Huangdi's favor is Neidan's left-click replacer. This uses your weapon. We're not really on this build ever going to focus on our weapon damage. And then lastly, Blessing of Jin-Chan. This is 3.5% chance to be used. When you kill a mob, it has a chance to proc more gold and more potions. I like to max this out eventually. I love gold. I spend my gold on gambling. I respec all the time. I recover charms. So yeah, more gold, more potions, more gooder. And then lastly, this is the really cool thing about Neidan, in my opinion, is called Weakest Chakra. We just recently 1-pointed this. We will max this out. It's a lot of points, but it's worth it. So at 1 point, which is actually 5 out of 12, because we have +4 to skills, this costs 200 energy and it lasts for 20 seconds. Now it has 2 parts. It has a radius, and the radius applies to the reduction to damage and the reduction to resistance. So in a 9.5 meter radius, which in Titan Quest is pretty big, I guess in real life is pretty big too, right? You reduce damage by 13%, meaning mobs do 13% less damage, and you reduce their resistances by 13%. So that's huge. The second part is transmission of 63 vitality damage. When you auto attack, when you hit with your knives, or when you hit with your Shen Pao, or your allies hit with anything, or your traps if you're using them, you transmit this 63 vitality damage. So you guys can start to see that when you're inside of this buff, the Occult with a Vile Ichor, this is another 10% additional vitality damage. This is another flat 5 vitality damage, right? You're starting to transmit a lot of vitality damage just by pushing a button. Now, each of our 9 knives also gets the, what is it, 63 at this point? Yeah, 63 vitality damage, and then scales accordingly. So this, I think, goes all the way up to 264. I think it's 264, but yeah, so it's literally one button that does just so much damage. So we finished normal difficulty. I know we're standing here at Typhon's grave, but we finished normal difficulty, and that is our knife throwing disruptor. That's the build and our gear. I hope you guys learned something. See you guys in the next one. Bye.